Good morning. It is Monday, November 3rd. Surviving Halloween weekend 2025. It's 8:30 here Monday morning. Hope everyone's doing good. Had a pretty cool weekend. Had a fun gig on Friday with some friends actually on Halloween. Turnout wasn't so great. Halloween is weird sometimes. I think, some places. Well, it was really cool because there was a lot of events going on. A lot of the times I find in the past, like with Halloween, I mean, Halloween's my favorite holiday. And a lot of times in the past, Halloween, it fell on a Friday this year. And a lot of times it will fall, like, whenever it falls on a weekday or something, the actual event of Halloween, there's not very much to do other than, the kids going trick or treating and some people have parties. But a lot of the times when it comes to like Halloween events and things like that, they tend to be, the weekend of, like if say Halloween's on a Tuesday or a Monday or whatever, all the parties or like dance parties or shows that are where they have bands will throw a Halloween party bash or something to get pull in a bunch of bands and play at a local bar or a venue. That typically, if Halloween falls on a Tuesday or a Thursday or whatever, those big kind of to do things will fall like that the weekend before. So this year was cool because it was actually on a Friday, and so there were a lot of events going on Friday. I think there were like 3 or 4 events going on. But we played with Space Junk at Symington Corner, which is a really sweet Grange Hall in Rockport, and it was on Halloween. Turnout wasn't great, but it was still super fun. I love playing with these guys. My great friends Ronnie and Halsey. We were in a band for a few years called Bone Broth, and that band kind of broke up about, geez, I don't know if it's almost 2 years ago now. But we've always been wanting to like continue that kind of a thing. That band was all improvised, where we just play off of each other or try to. And they're just amazing, amazing musicians. They really push me musically. It's a challenge, and I think I'm a better person and maybe a better musician because of those guys. So any chance I get to play with them, I will do it in a heartbeat. I don't care where it is, when it is. I'll try to make it happen. But since the since Broth had broken up, this was only our third gig. We played the first time just as a trio at Hey Sailor, which was like almost 2 years ago. And then I think that summer, I believe we played, or maybe it was the summer after that. It's kind of all a blur. We played a set or one big set at the Lobster Festival. And then there was a gig in Belfast at the Belfast Summer Nights, which is a big summer gathering for music. And that gig, I I had double booked myself and I wasn't able to do it, even though I booked the gig, which was really stupid. And I had to get my friend Ben, who's an awesome, awesome musician and drummer. I had to get him. Luckily, he was able to cover for me. So technically, at that point there was 3 Space Junk gigs that we had done, but the one I couldn't do. And then this past Halloween gig, this past Friday, Halloween was like the 4th gig that we've had. And we talked about, wanting to do more gigs. It's hard sometimes because, none of us have been, I guess, in the band have been like super proactive as far as like, okay, let's start booking gigs and let's do this, let's get all this going. None of us are really kind of those kinds of people, and then just those guys are very busy with other projects and things like that. But when things come up, opportunity presents itself like it did for these other sporadic shows. We'll usually make it happen, but we're not like out there, in the trenches, calling people and sending out emails, trying to book gigs. But we talked about, doing doing a recording project right before Bone Broth had broken up. We were knee deep in working on an album, and unfortunately, after the whole thing folded, we ended up recording this whole album, and it was like an hour or so of music. But unfortunately, it was all shelved, and never will never see the light of day. And it was actually coming together pretty well. But we've been talking about since the Halloween gig about getting together and doing a recording. So we'll see what happens. Outside of that, I work with those guys. I've worked with Ronnie and Halsey quite a few times, like with our electronic groups. With my band Quantum, Ronnie has Sonic Wallpaper, and Halsey has Halsey, and so our three groups have done quite a few little projects and shows together, and that's been really fun. So there's always some kind of thread that like connects us, and we've become really good friends. But musically, we've stayed connected, and the electronic groups that we each have probably been the most collaborative, I guess. So today's show is going to be on. I've never actually done a show on this kind of subject, but today's show is going to be on a bootleg, concert that I've been listening to it this morning, and I've been just blown away by how great. Well, not only the performance is just amazing, but the sound quality is really really great, really really great. And this is Autechre, my favorite band. Surprise, surprise. I've done a lot of shows on Autechre. I just saw them a week ago today. It's hard to believe it was a week ago today that I saw them down at the Paradise. My review of the show and the whole experience I put up about I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Amazing, amazing. And it was my second time seeing Autechre, and I think it was such an intense experience that I almost feel like this might have been better. I might have even topped it. Although the first time I saw them, which was like 8 to 10 years ago, I did get a chance to hang out with them, and and through a series of events, we started talking right after their gig. It was at 3 Art Space in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is a tiny, tiny little venue, and it's super intimate. It has like a 200 seater or 200 capacity. There's not even really any seats. Amazing, amazing venue. And I was able to talk with him, and then they invited me backstage, and we hung out for a few hours. It was incredible. So that's one of the big differences. I did not get to hang out with them this time. This venue that we saw them, I went with my buddy Sammy, was at the Paradise, and it was sold out. All of the dates for this big tour that they've been doing have been selling out, and it's been an extensive tour, like huge, and they're still doing it right now. They've been going since August, I believe. Crazy. I've been, they're my favorite band of all time, and I listen to them almost every day. Kind of, yeah. It's interesting because certain kinds of music you have to be in maybe a certain mood or mindset for. To me, I can listen to them anytime, really, anytime. It's always inspiring. So that's how I am with them, and I've been listening to them for, 15, 20 years, maybe 20 years now. One of my best friends, Sean Russell, who I had met at college, had got me into them. So I remember, like, he lives in New York City, and now at the time when we were really close, we're really close now, but we haven't really seen each other in a really long time. But at that time when I met him, we were always hanging out in college, listening to music, and he turned me on to a lot of cool movies and music. He used to live down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and so I used to go down there every now and then, and we'd hang out, and it was awesome. And then a few times he came up to Maine too, so super cool. And so he that was one of the, I mean, so many things he turned me on to, but Autechre was the band, and I remember he was like, I think you'll dig this stuff, and so forever since college. So really really awesome, high school, college, right after high school. So I've been listening to this really astoundingly good bootleg recording of Autechre from the most recent tour, and I think it was recorded last week. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy this day and age. All the kind of weird, crazy shit going on in our world is like these kinds of things that happen are like, okay, this is pretty cool. And it's Autechre live at the Ogden Theater in Denver, Colorado. Denver, Colorado, and it was recorded in October 25, and it's an hour and 21 minutes, and I've been listening to it a lot this morning since I got up, and it's I've been listening to, checking out other live recordings from this tour. This is one of the best ones. But the thing is, there's so many with Autech. If you're a fan of them, there's so much music with these guys. Like, not only, I mean, they have an insane amount of music. I really think that Autechre has got to be the most prolific band I've ever come across. It's just insane. I mean, the only other artists that, like, well, I know there's a lot of artists that have a huge discography and tons of music out there, but like, one that I think where it's similar is like Frank Zappa, for instance. Like, if you're a Zappa fan, and I'm a huge Zappa fan, there's an endless um, source of music, like whether studio albums, reissues, bootleg concerts, just endless amounts of stuff, and stuff, and aside from all of the, maybe bootleg live recordings or what have you, just studio albums alone, it's insane. It's insane. And I think, like, Autechre is that. I think, I don't know of any other artists out there really that are as prolific as them. Maybe, well, another group I could say is insane how on how much music that they put out every year or every couple of years is the Melvins. Amazing, amazing, iconic band. And I'm astounded by how much music they put out. They put out a new studio album out. Like, I think they have like 35 albums out or something insane. So prolific. But Autechre has been, it's been probably about 4 years. During COVID, they released two albums, Signs, and then its follow up. But since then, they've been doing, about 2 years ago, there was like 2 years they put out two studio albums, and it's kind of like a double album, and they were released within, I don't know, 3 or 4 months of each other. Amazing, amazing records. Some of the best music I think they've ever done. And so, and then for 2 years there was, kind of, I guess, silence. And then about the summer of 23, 24, they started to, they did a big tour of Europe, and they toured all over Europe, you know, and they did this big summer tour that was from, like, I think June till about August, and they played a lot of shows. And what they did was and then about, it was probably, yeah, probably a year ago, during this big massive tour that they did all over Europe, they this tour they've been in the States for a really long time. They're from the UK, of course, and they have been in the States probably more so with these dates than any other time. When I saw them, it was 10 years ago. They were doing a big tour, but it wasn't as extensive. They only played like major cities, and it was like a relatively short run. But this one is a huge run. They're playing everywhere. They so when they did this tour of Europe about 2 years ago, they recorded all of their shows. They recorded all of their shows, all the concerts from direct to board, meaning that, like, if anybody out there doesn't know what that means or what have you, they basically recorded from the actual sound, from the actual board that was running the sound. So it's a direct, recording. So they recorded all of their shows, and then I think about a year ago, they released this massive fucking box set of all of the shows, and they released each like basically each city that they played in. They released, they played, like, for instance, they did a show where they played in Spain, and they released that separately, but also within this box set as a more or less a studio album, but it's a live recording. And from what I know, they recorded all of the shows directly from the board, so you don't, like, usually when you get concerts or hear concerts from the board, you're not going to get exterior sounds, with people talking and screaming and all of those things. Like, you might get a little faint sound, some faint sounds of the audience or the people there, but generally you don't. You just get the music for what it is. So the quality obviously is pretty awesome. Bootlegs, obviously, you don't. It can be mixed. Sometimes today's show, this show that I've been listening to, is, from what I know, is totally bootleg. It was basically a guy recorded the show on his phone. And so when it's a bootleg, that's usually the case, And then back in the day when bootlegs were really huge, they still are, but, like, unissued bootleg recordings were, done with before the age of technology that we have now, like phones, iPhones, or what have you. They, people would bring little, like, cassette recorders or what have you to record the shows. Some bands too, more in the jam band scene, they would actually have areas of where bands could come, or the audience could come and record the shows. So, but most bootlegs now and recordings and concerts and all of these things are, in this day and age, are recorded on people's phones. So it's really hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes, you get, it's like distorted, it's all maxed out, the sound isn't too good, or the person might be too close to the speakers. There might be too many people around them, so, like, obviously that causes all kinds of disruptions. And then you have people just being really loud at a concert that drowns out the music. Sometimes when it's like a rock show or a metal show, the person will be kind of like on the floor where the audience, where the majority of people are, and there's maybe a mosh pit or whatever. That will cause the recording to sometimes sound like shit. But then sometimes you get amazing recordings, and this is like really good. I'm like really impressed, because as far as I know, Live at the Ogden Theater in Denver, Colorado is basically recorded, from what I gather, from somebody who was at the concert who just used his iPhone. The sound quality is, like, insane. It's really, really good. It's interesting too, because I just saw them a week ago, and I recognize some of the music on here that they there's like two tracks or two tunes, if you will, that I recognize from them playing last week, which is wild. And it's an hour and 21 minutes. It was put up by Ikari, Icari, on YouTube. Evidently, this is this guy who captured this concert, but it's really good. It's really high end quality. I'm kind of amazed. Sometimes bootlegs can be cool. Like I think this is a good one because you can hear, like not only is the audio really really good, but you can hear the audience, getting really excited and pumped and like they're totally into it and they're just, and it's, sometimes it can go the other way where it's like drowning out, or you have like a guy who or a girl who's recording that particular concert and they're like screaming and yelling, into the phone too. So, that can be really distracting and make it almost, but this is pretty cool because you do hear the actual audio is actually really really good. I got this really nice Bluetooth speaker this year. I was kind of late to the game because I know there's so many speakers available, Bluetooth speakers. I had never used Bluetooth before. I remember the first time I came across or was kind of introduced to Bluetooth or heard it. I was I used to work at the YMCA a few years back, about 3 years ago, at the Rockland Y. Yeah, about 3 years ago, I was working at the Rockland YMCA, and I was cleaning. I was the cleaning guy, and I did that job for about. I started working there during COVID. Maybe it was like 2021. For almost a year or so, I didn't really work, and then close to a little less than a year, I got a job working at the Y, and then I can't even remember the timeline of it. It's kind of a weird blur. I did briefly for the Y, I worked at home during COVID too, I should say that. And I was doing like computer work at home. And then I started to work where I would go to the location. And then anyway, one of the days that I was there, one of the nights I was there, there were these two guys there at work, and I was there cleaning. These guys were in there doing. They had this big painting project that they were doing, and one of the guys had this like really. It was a pretty good size speaker. I don't know the actual size of it, but it was a pretty good like stereo speaker, and he had that hooked up for Bluetooth, and he had it going in his in one of the rooms where they were painting. And it's really the first time I heard Bluetooth. Really, 'cause I was kind of super late to the game, and I was like, wow, like the sound quality was kind of insane. And he was, just made a playlist on his phone, and he was listening to music while he was painting. And I remember going in there and being like, I remember hearing the music, and I'm like, wow, the sound quality is amazing. And I went in there, and I was like, what is that? Like, I knew what Bluetooth was, but I had never. I didn't know anything about it. I had never used it before. And I remember going into the room and asking him like, "Wow, what is that? That speaker is killer. Like, what is that?" And then he told me what it was and explained it to me, and I was like, "Wow, like that's pretty badass." Because I was blown away by the quality. And then about fast forward probably a year or two, one of the bands I used to play in, that band kind of broke up this year, called Electric Bonfire. John Luft, who was kind of the main, I guess, point guy of the band. He did the booking and did most of the promotion. We were playing a gig somewhere outside or something. And I think it was like we had just got, yeah, we were playing, actually I remember, we were playing, Electric Bonfire was playing a gig at the Toddy Pond Farm, which is a really cool kind of farm to table venue here in Swanville, pretty close to Belfast. It's about a 20-minute drive. Really beautiful, beautiful venue. I played couple of gigs there this summer. I usually play there every year. Really sweet spot. It's a farm, farmhouse, but it's a really nice restaurant, and it's all local food. They all grow everything there. And we had played an Electric Bonfire gig there, and I think it was like after we did sound check or something. John had these really nice speakers for sound for the PA, and he played all of this music before we got going, and then in between sets. And it was all he had bought these new speakers, and they were all Bluetooth. They all had Bluetooth capability, and he was like essentially doing the same thing that this other guy had done, and he was playing all of this music on a playlist on his phone. And I was just like, what the fuck? I couldn't believe how pristine the quality was. And I remember being like, I need to get one of these. And then, for whatever reason, I never did. And that was a couple of years ago, probably 2 years ago. So then this past year, I think it was like wintertime, I was I was like, you know what? I should get a nice Bluetooth speaker, like see what they're about, because I know they're like, there's different models, and there are different, some that are more expensive than others, some are cheap, and then I think I went to Target in Rockland, and I was like looking at all of these Bluetooth speakers, and they were all like pretty good price. Like the prices were really good. I think there was one that was 85 to 100, and then you had some that were cheaper. Um, and so I came across this one here, and it was for these kinds of smaller ones. I didn't think I needed something like a big speaker, because they do have big ones, like big, ones that you can put in an office or a big giant room. Felt like, well, I probably just need something that sounds really good. It's pretty compact, and that, and you can, really hear really good quality audio. So I bought the best one that they had there, which was this guy here, and it's waterproof. It's something you can, it's got battery capabilities, but then you can just plug it into the wall and charge it. And it's amazing. Like, it's so awesome. I typically, when I listen to music, I mainly listen to CDs. I do listen to cassettes too. I have a cassette player, I have a CD player, and then in my car, which I listen to a lot of music in, I listen to CDs. And then in my music space, when I'm like working on music stuff or like practicing along with albums or whatever, what have you, I usually always use CDs for that. But for streaming music, I use Bandcamp because Spotify sucks. So I just use Bandcamp for the most part, and then I will use YouTube. So like, again, you can, like today's show is talking about this live recording is just, it's really awesome. And I will typically in the morning, I'll like listen to music on this little speaker. And then the other thing that, and it's just amazing quality. The other thing that's really, really cool is just personal recording projects that I'm working on, or like even if lately I've been working on a lot of new, I've been writing a lot of new. It's always a very long process for me, and it takes forever, but I just kind of chip away at different ideas. But lately, past few months, I've been writing a lot of new quantum tunes. So typically what I'll do is I'll just like record, I got a pretty good app on my phone that's got a pretty good recording capability. Typically what I'll do is I'll just, just record an idea or something that's coming together, or a melody that I like, and I record it. And then sometimes I'll record, sometimes you have that situation where the song kind of just jumps out of you and you have this whole tune ready. But that's really, really rare. And then most of the time it's like me chipping away and chopping away at it, and then something will maybe come out of it, and sometimes it won't. But I'll always record everything, and then being that I have the speaker, I can play it back in the speaker, obviously, and get a real sense of like how it sounds, if it's working, if it's coming together. But it's really awesome because I can really hear if it's like kind of connecting because it's really good quality. And then the other thing I started doing this summer, which I hadn't really done before, I've been using this app and I recorded a lot of the quantum shows that we had with my phone. And I found a pretty good kind of sweet spot after doing it for like I recorded probably maybe 6 or 7 shows that we had this summer. And after about 2 times, first couple times like it sounded okay. The recording was okay. Not great, but pretty good. And but then I got aware of like where's like the sweet spot to record with my phone. And I think I found it and then recorded about four shows or so with my phone in that particular spot. And there's a couple of the shows that sound the actual sound quality is insanely good. Which and there's one in particular that I think the sound quality I was blown away by how full the sound was. Like it sounds like it. I think it sounds like a live recording, or I should say, it sounds like it could be an album, where I could release it as a live album or something. Like it's kind of crazy. And that's the thing with this Bluetooth speakers. It will give me a good indicator if something really sounds good because most people listen to things this way or earbuds or what have you. So, and a lot of people have Bluetooth in their car, so it's a great factor. But listening to this bootleg of this show of Autechre in Colorado, again, I'm amazed. Like, with all that garbage that's goes on in our world and is going on in our world, like, and with technology growing as far going as far as it has, there's some pretty amazing things that are pretty awesome, and I think this is pretty cool. Back in the day, again, like bootlegs before iPhones, recordings were done with maybe some kind of cassette remote recorder or what have you. But with iPhones now, certain iPhones, if you get a good recording, you can get an amazing recording. And to think that this show was just recorded with this guy at the concert is wild, and it sounds fantastic. I've been listening to it on my speaker, and I've just been so kind of blown away by the actual sound quality of it and the richness of it, and it totally captures the vibe of what it's like to see Autechre, in concert. And the thing is, too, it's really funny because the video, or all videos on YouTube, come with audio and video, and they play every show in the dark, which is just really makes for a heightened experience. And I saw a thing of where they turn off all the lights. When I saw them about 8 to 10 years ago, that's what they did, and I was just like, that's intense. Like I've never seen a band do that before, because typically nowadays a lot of bigger bands especially will do these big kind of production shows where they'll have all kinds of lights and all the bells and whistles, which I like. But this is like so extremely the opposite, and it just creates this like really kind of rich and very intense atmosphere. And it's so funny because it's not like it doesn't resemble anything from like your typical concert experience now. Like say if you go see like LCD Sound System or Ghost or Slayer or fucking whatever, like where it's like massive production, massive, and that's cool. I like it. I'm a big fan of that. I like a show. I like a concert, but I like a show when there's something else going on with it too. But this whole kind of thing of how they do it is just really wild. And it's interesting, like with this video, like you can't see them because it's all darkness. But the audio is just really great. And you can hear people talking and cheering, but it's not like, it doesn't interfere. It's not too loud. It's not like, it doesn't like distort the speaker where people are like, we have a group of drunk people that are screaming and this isn't that. It's really good. But I love, that's the thing I kind of love about. That's like I used to buy a lot of Wild Rufus records that doesn't exist anymore, but was a really cool local record shop. They used to have a bootleg section, and they would sell bootlegs. And some of the recordings that they would sell there were really good for the most part. But I kind of like that balance of like, especially if it's not a direct from board recording or direct to board recording, where you can get the vibe of like what it's like to actually be there because you can hear the people reacting. I love that, and so that's for me like listening to bootlegs, especially back then. I have a lot of bootleg CDs like bands like Tool, Rage Against the Machine, Psychic TV. I have this really awesome recording of them, and it's like essentially kind of a bootleg. Uh, Primus bootlegs. I mean, just all kinds of shit. And I, that's one of the things I love about, and you know, of course, all those came out before YouTube and the internet. And that's the thing. That's one of the cool things I love about when you get hold of a really good bootleg is you feel like you're at the concert, you get the vibe, but then you know if you really luck out, which is the main thing that you want, where the audio is killer, and then you get the whole experience. Super cool. And there's so many recordings of Autechre's tour. It's like insane. I've been listening to some other shows that I might do reviews on too because on them because what why not? And they do each set I do believe is totally different each night. They do improvise. I'm not really sure like how they do it because they're not like your typical band or typical. They don't do things in a stereotypical way. Like typically when you see a band play, um, like say, well, one band for instance, like Death Heaven, who is one of my favorite um, metal bands going. I just love them, and they put out this amazing album earlier this year. And so typically when bands put out a new album and they go through the tour cycle, they're gonna play a bunch of tracks from that new album to help promote it. Sometimes they'll play the entire album, but the tour is obviously put together to promote that album. So they really you know they really push it. They did that big time. Def Heaven did it a lot with the album that came out before Infinite Granite, and they really pushed that album. They did a bunch of shows where they just played the album in its entirety. So you have that. So like the tours are usually used as promotional things to kind of promote their latest studio album. But Autechre doesn't ever do that. They, as far as I know, they have tons of studio albums out, and as far as I know, they've never really like played any of those tunes on those albums live. I mean, they might have at some point, but I've never come across. I've listened to a lot of live recordings of them, and I've never come across anything that I recognize from a studio album, which is so cool. Even and again, they're not like your typical band. Like they don't like put out an album every couple of years and then do the tour, promote and do all this press for the album, tour for 6 months, 8 months, or 4 months, and then there's a break, and then they go out again, and then maybe another little tour, and then there's like a couple of years go by, they're back in the studio, record another album, and then go through the whole kind of cycle again. That's your typically that's typically what you see for a band. Autechre doesn't really do that at all, so like it's pretty unconventional, and they don't. And I've never heard any of their music from their studio world. Uh, I've never heard them perform any of those tracks. It's always different, and I think that they improvise a lot. It's hard to tell. I think they do, it's interesting listening to this bootleg because there's like two tunes. Well, if you want to call them tunes, but two chunks of music that I remember them playing on Monday, last Monday at the Paradise, and I'm like, oh wait, I actually recognize that. Which, being such a huge fan of theirs, and I've listened to so many of their studio albums and tons of their live recordings. That's the first time I've ever heard that, so it was kind of interesting. But other than that, that's like the closest to that kind of thing that I've ever heard. So it's kind of interesting. And there's so many great recordings right now online on YouTube from all of these shows. So I might do some more live reviews for these bootlegs because they're just awesome. And it's always different. It's always a different, unique experience. You know, sometimes their music is like when I saw them, it was kind of like balls to the wall, jungle, drum and bass kind of stuff, and with the big time ambient vibe. And then sometimes, their music is more down tempo, slower, more darker tunes. And then some of their stuff is like pure, is like pure atmosphere, and it's very ambient, very sparse. Sometimes their music is really rigid, jagged, and disjointed, and just like incredibly rhythmically complex, kind of like when I saw them. Sometimes that's happening, and then other times it's a whole like real minimalist experience. So it's always different, and that's what I love so much about them. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.